Balmoral was meant to be quiet, orderly, and controlled. But inside the old Scottish residence, one young royal stepped across an invisible line, and the room changed instantly. Princess Charlotte did not shout, did not rebel loudly, and did not ask permission. She simply moved toward Catherine when protocol said she should remain still. And that single act forced Camilla's office to intervene in a way no one expected. Before we go deeper into what this means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Charlotte had only taken a few steps, but those steps carried the weight of generations. Balmoral was not just another royal home. It was the family's private Scottish residence, where public smiles disappeared and rules grew sharper behind closed doors. Protocol, in plain words, meant the strict order of who stood where, who moved first, and who was expected to remain still. Catherine felt the change before anyone spoke. She watched Charlotte move toward her, and for one brief second, the moment looked painfully human. A daughter saw her mother under pressure and wanted to stand beside her, nothing more. But in that room, even love could be judged as disorder. Catherine's face tightened because she understood what Charlotte could not understand. Her child had stepped into a battle of position, power, and pride. Charlotte stopped near Catherine with a brave stillness. Then a palace aide crossed the room with careful steps. The aide did not raise a voice. The aide did not need to. Charlotte was told to return to her assigned place behind the senior royals, and the words landed harder because they were delivered softly. Catherine watched helplessly, caught between protecting her daughter and not making the wound public. William saw it all. The prince's expression changed, not with loud anger, but with the silence that comes before a decision. He knew Charlotte had not been corrected by accident. He knew the aide had not acted alone. The message had come through Camilla's office, and that made the correction feel colder and more personal. This was no simple reminder of order. This was a line being drawn. Camilla did not move. She did not soften. The queen consort's face stayed unreadable as Charlotte stepped back, but Catherine's reaction told William everything. The mother's pain was raw and real. In that instant, the family understood Charlotte's mistake was not the issue. The real issue was who feared what her loyalty revealed. And before the family could recover from Charlotte's quiet humiliation, the real question began to form. Who had the most to lose from one young princess standing beside her mother? What happened at Balmoral was not just about where Charlotte stood. It was about who she stood with, who ordered her away, and who understood the message behind it. Catherine saw a daughter trying to protect her. William saw a boundary being crossed. Camilla saw a challenge to control. And Charlotte, still young but no longer invisible, felt the cold weight of palace power for the first time. Charlotte tried to hold herself together, but the room had already taught her something painful. She was young enough to need protection, yet old enough to notice when adults watched every movement. Balmoral mattered because it was not a public stage with crowds and cameras. It was the private family ground where small choices revealed rank, favor, and fear. Catherine knew her daughter had stepped into a place no child should understand. Catherine felt guilt rise before anger. She had trained herself to stay composed, because a princess is expected to remain steady even when her own children sense pressure around her. A princess, in plain terms, is a royal woman born or married into the family who carries duty as well as expectation. Catherine carried both that evening, but Charlotte saw only her mother. That made the correction hurt more. Love had been mistaken for defiance. William stood still because stillness was safer than fury. The prince understood that one sharp word could turn Charlotte's embarrassment into a larger royal incident. He looked toward the aide, then toward Camilla, and the silence between those glances said, enough. He was not only protecting Charlotte from the room, he was protecting Catherine from another wound, and protecting the crown from itself. Camilla's office had always worked through quiet channels. The queen consort did not need to speak when aides, seating charts, and protocol instructions could carry authority for her. Protocol, simply put, is the royal rulebook of movement, order, and visibility. It decides who walks first, who stands closest, and who must wait. That was why Charlotte's step mattered. It disturbed a pattern carefully built. A courtier later recorded in a private household note that Charlotte's action exposed a tension already forming between Catherine's household and Camilla's senior staff. The courtier did not call it rebellion. The courtier called it a visible fracture, and those words became impossible to forget. William waited until the evening thinned and asked the question no aide wanted to answer. Why had Charlotte been singled out so quickly? The silence that followed did not calm him. It pointed backward. But the answer was not born in that room. It began days earlier, with one private incident that turned a family visit into a test of royal loyalty. Every palace crisis has a moment people later pretend was small. At Balmoral, that moment came before the protocol break, before the aide stepped forward, before Charlotte was told to stand down. It happened during a private rehearsal for the family's Sunday walk to Crathy Kirk, when Charlotte quietly refused to follow a revised order that placed Catherine behind Camilla's line of movement. Charlotte noticed it first, because children often see what adults hope they can hide. Crathy Kirk is the small church near Balmoral where the royals attend Sunday service. And the walk there matters, because even a family movement can become a public sign of status. Catherine had been placed farther back than expected, not openly removed, not openly insulted, but shifted just enough for the meaning to sting. Charlotte looked from the paper to her mother and asked why Catherine had to stand behind Camilla's side of the procession. The room tightened. A revised order, in simple terms, meant a changed plan, showing who would walk where and in what sequence. The aides treated it like a harmless adjustment, but several understood the truth. Catherine's visible place had been lowered, and everyone present knew visibility inside the monarchy was never accidental. Catherine reached for calm before Charlotte could push further. She told her daughter not to challenge the arrangement, and she said it gently, but her voice carried the pain she was trying to bury. Charlotte heard that pain. The young princess did not understand every rule, but she understood her mother's hurt. That was enough. Her face changed, and the silence around her made the lesson even colder. Camilla's private secretary received word of Charlotte's question before the day was over. A private secretary is the senior aide who manages messages, schedules, and sensitive instructions for a royal household. In a documented household account prepared later that evening, Charlotte's question was marked as "noted for reception conduct." Those 4 words turned a child's concern into an office concern. Camilla did not need to confront Charlotte herself. The Queen Consort's office moved with quiet force, and the instruction was issued before the Balmoral reception. Charlotte must remain in her designated place, and must not move beside Catherine without approval. It sounded simple. It sounded procedural. But beneath it sat a deeper fear, that Catherine's child had seen the slight and might make it visible. Charlotte carried that wound into the reception without knowing the room was already prepared for her. Catherine carried it too, though she tried to hide it behind composure. And when Charlotte later stepped forward anyway, everyone who knew about the rehearsal understood the truth. This was no innocent misstep. This was the hidden trigger, returning in public form. And once that hidden trigger returned in front of the family, the correction could no longer remain gentle, private, or invisible. The first correction happened in silence. The second happened behind a closed door. After Charlotte was made to stand down, William did not storm through Balmoral or raise his voice in the corridor. He waited until the reception ended, walked into a smaller sitting room, and faced the aide who had delivered the order. Then Camilla entered, and the room became colder than the Highland evening outside. William asked for one answer, and his voice made the aide lower their eyes. He wanted to know who had decided Charlotte needed correcting in front of the family. The prince understood routine household management, which simply means the daily control of rooms, timing, seating, and movement inside a royal residence. But this was not routine. This involved his daughter, his wife, and a moment of public shame inside a private home. Camilla arrived with her senior aide before the explanation could settle. The Queen Consort did not come as a bystander. She came as the person whose office had carried the instruction, and that changed everything. A royal office, in plain terms, is the team that manages a senior royal's schedule, messages, public duties, and private arrangements. Once Camilla's aide entered beside her, William's concern became a clash between households. William held his anger in place, but it burned through every word. He said Charlotte should never have been used as pressure against Catherine. He did not accuse the Queen Consort of cruelty. He did something worse. He forced her to sit with the meaning of what had happened. A child had moved toward her mother, and an office had answered before a parent could. Camilla felt the walls closing in. She insisted protocol protected the monarchy from confusion, from embarrassment, from signs of disorder that could weaken the crown. The Queen Consort spoke carefully, but William heard only an excuse dressed as duty. To him, protocol had not protected Charlotte. It had exposed her. It had told a young girl, that loyalty to Catherine could be treated as a problem. The aide finally admitted what no one wanted said aloud. Charlotte's movement had been flagged in advance because of the Crathy Kirk rehearsal. That admission landed like a second correction. It proved the stand-down order had not been a quick reaction. It had been expected, prepared, and waiting. William looked at Camilla, and the silence between them became sharper than any raised voice. Catherine entered late and said almost nothing. She did not need to. Outside the doorway, she reached for Charlotte's hand, and the simple gesture carried more force than accusation. Catherine held her daughter close, while William watched the wound become impossible to deny. Charles heard of the confrontation before midnight. The king's response was quiet, but it carried authority. This was no longer just family pain. It had become a question of power. Because once Charles heard that a child had been corrected under the weight of office politics, the question was no longer who broke protocol, it was who had the power to enforce it. Royal power rarely announces itself. It appears in a changed chair, a delayed invitation, a name moved one line lower, a child told to step back before anyone explains why. Camilla's office understood that world perfectly. But at Balmoral, the machinery became visible. And when Charles sat alone with the written account of Charlotte's correction, even he understood that something had gone too far. Charles read every line once, then read the most painful line again. The written account described how Charlotte had moved toward Catherine, how the aide had crossed the room, and how the instruction had been delivered before either parent could respond. A palace office, in plain terms, is the team behind a senior royal that controls schedules, messages, seating, movement, and private instructions. That mattered because the order had not come from family instinct. It had come from machinery. Camilla's office had shaped the evening before anyone entered the room. The Queen Consort's team used protocol notes, movement plans, and family positioning to preserve seniority during a gathering where Catherine's visibility already carried heavy meaning. Seniority simply means rank inside the royal family, the order that decides who appears first, who stands closest, and whose place is protected. At Balmoral, that order became emotional, because Catherine was not just a title, she was Charlotte's mother. Charles set the file down without speaking. The king had seen arguments over status before, but this was different. Charlotte had been placed in the center of adult tension, and that troubled him more than any broken rule. He understood why the household valued discipline. He also understood the danger of letting discipline look like coldness toward a child. Camilla felt betrayed when Charles questioned the judgment of her office. She believed her aides had enforced standards others quietly depended on, then left her to carry the blame when the moment turned ugly. The Queen Consort did not see herself as cruel. She saw herself as cornered by a system that demands order, then punishes the person seen defending it. William found the attached note later and stopped at one phrase. Charlotte's movement had been marked as potentially disruptive. The prince repeated the words once, quietly, as if hearing them made them worse. A child walking toward Catherine had been treated like a threat to control. That revelation unsettled him, because it proved Charlotte had been watched before she ever stepped forward. Catherine understood it too. Her daughter had not merely been corrected in the moment. Charlotte had been anticipated, measured, and managed before she acted. That realization cut deeper than the public embarrassment. It meant Catherine's family bond had been turned into a risk item. Charles finally ordered the household to pause any further instruction involving Charlotte. The king's command stopped the machinery, but it could not erase what the machinery had already done. By morning, Balmoral's silence had changed, and every person in the house knew that Charlotte's small step had created consequences no one could fully contain. The next morning did not bring peace. It brought changed faces, careful greetings, and a breakfast room where every chair seemed to carry a message. Charlotte entered quietly beside Catherine, no longer looking like a child who had simply made a mistake. She looked like someone who had learned that love inside the monarchy could still be corrected, managed, and moved back into place. Charlotte stayed close to Catherine, and that small choice made the room feel even heavier. The household had shifted overnight. Aides avoided the words, "stand down," but their careful behavior said enough. A household, in simple terms, means the private staff and office structure that keeps royal life running inside a residence. That mattered because the people who usually made everything look effortless now seemed afraid to make one wrong move. Catherine noticed every lowered voice. She understood that silence could be another form of pressure, and she hated that Charlotte had to feel it. Her daughter sat unusually close at breakfast, quiet but composed, trying to behave as if nothing had changed. Catherine touched her hand once, softly, not to make a scene, but to tell Charlotte she had not done anything shameful. William watched from across the room and felt the cost of restraint more deeply than the original insult. The prince saw Charlotte force a smile when someone spoke to her, and that smile cut through him. He had stayed calm the night before to protect her from more attention. Now he wondered whether calm had allowed the damage to settle too neatly into the walls. Charles acted before the morning could harden into another quiet mistake. The king instructed staff that no child should be directly corrected in a family setting without parental approval. Staff, in plain words, means the aides, attendants, and private officials who carry out orders inside the royal household. His instruction mattered because it marked the incident as serious. Charlotte had not just been guided, she had been handled. Camilla's office withdrew one planned movement note for the day, and that quiet withdrawal revealed more than anyone intended. The Queen Consort's team had prepared further positioning instructions. The note disappearing proved that Charlotte's correction had not been an isolated response. It had been part of a wider attempt to control who stood where, who moved when, and who appeared close to Catherine. A senior courtier privately warned William, in a documented household memo, that if the story reached the press, it would not be seen as protocol, it would be seen as a child being publicly diminished. The prince read that warning once, then passed it to Catherine without a word. Catherine finally chose to step away from the machinery. She asked to speak with Camilla without aides present. The request changed the air at Balmoral, because for the first time, the wound would not be discussed through notes, offices, or careful messages. And when Catherine finally stepped away from the machinery of offices and instructions, the next conversation would decide whether this wound became permanent. No aides, no notes, no careful palace language. Just two women in a Balmoral room, where the fire had burned low and the old walls seemed to hold their breath. Catherine did not arrive to accuse. Camilla did not arrive to apologize easily. But between them stood Charlotte's hurt face, William's anger, and the uncomfortable truth that protocol had touched a child. Catherine closed the door herself, and that single act changed the conversation. She had asked for privacy because she did not want another household dispute, another note passed through staff, another careful phrase designed to protect everyone except Charlotte. A household dispute, in plain words, is a conflict between royal offices and family teams, not a direct family conversation. Catherine wanted something different. She wanted Camilla to hear the pain without anyone softening it first. Camilla agreed reluctantly, but she understood what refusal would mean. The Queen Consort knew her office already looked too close to the correction, and staying away would make that shadow darker. She sat with control in her posture, but control did not hide the strain. Camilla had defended order for years. Now order had brought her face to face with a mother who had watched her daughter shrink under it. Catherine spoke quietly, and that made the words harder to escape. Charlotte had not moved out of ambition. Charlotte had not tried to claim space or challenge rank. She had moved because she was frightened for her mother and loyal to the person she trusted most. Catherine said the correction changed how the child saw the family. It told her that even love could be treated like a breach. Camilla looked away when Catherine repeated Charlotte's question from later that night. Had she embarrassed her mother? The Queen Consort softened then, not completely, but enough for the room to feel less armed. Camilla had expected anger from Catherine. She had prepared for blame. She had not prepared for the small cruelty of a child, wondering whether love had caused shame. Camilla finally admitted the office had focused too hard on optics after the Crathy Kirk rehearsal. Optics, simply put, means how something looks to others, especially when appearances shape power. The Queen Consort said her team had feared another visible break in order and had failed to consider Charlotte's age, fear, and intention. The admission did not erase the wound, but it named it. Catherine did not ask for humiliation in return. She asked for one thing only. Charlotte must never again be treated as a symbol in a seniority battle. Camilla accepted the demand and agreed to withdraw the stand-down instruction formally. But relief came too late to stay private. Because private regret could heal a room, but it could not stop the first headline from turning Charlotte's quiet step into a national argument. By the time the story left Balmoral, it no longer belonged only to the family. It belonged to front pages, broadcasters, commentators, and crowds who saw in Charlotte's small movement something bigger than protocol. Some called it discipline, others called it cruelty, but one image captured the public mood. Catherine holding Charlotte's hand outside Balmoral, both looking composed, both looking wounded. William read the palace response before it reached the public, and frustration hardened in his face. The statement called the incident a minor misunderstanding over private family protocol. A palace response, in plain terms, is the official wording used to guide public reaction and protect the institution from damage. That mattered because the words protected the system more clearly than Charlotte. They explained order. They did not explain hurt. Catherine stayed quiet, but silence did not mean peace. She knew the public had seen what the household tried to soften. Viewers were no longer debating where Charlotte should have stood. They were asking why a child had been made to feel wrong for standing near her mother. Catherine understood why that question mattered. It turned a private correction into a public judgment on royal tenderness. Camilla felt the pressure gather around her name. The queen consort watched the phrase, "stand down," attach itself to her office, and repeat across commentary panels like a verdict already passed. A commentary panel, simply put, is a televised discussion where broadcasters and guests debate a public issue. Camilla had faced criticism before, but this was different. This time, the criticism involved a child, and that made defense feel colder. One London newspaper captured the national mood with brutal simplicity. Its front page showed a cropped image of Catherine holding Charlotte's hand outside Balmoral, under the headline, "The Child Who Stepped Forward." The image did not need a long explanation. Catherine looked composed, Charlotte looked steady, but together they looked wounded. That single frame made the palace's careful words feel thin. Outside Buckingham Palace, a small crowd gathered near the gates. A woman stood near the front, holding a handwritten sign that read, "Let Charlotte stand with her mother." Buckingham Palace, in plain words, is the London headquarters of the monarchy and the place many people gather when royal feeling becomes public feeling. The crowd was not large, but it mattered because it gave emotion a physical place. William saw the sign later and said nothing for a long moment. The prince understood that the public had reached the heart of the matter faster than the institution had. Camilla's office had called it order. The country had called it pain. Charles realized silence would no longer be enough. The king knew the monarchy could not answer this with one polished statement and a closed door. It needed a final decision, one that gave Charlotte protection, Catherine dignity, William assurance, and Camilla a boundary she could not cross again. And so the story returned to where it began. Not to the public gates, not to the headlines, but to Balmoral, where one final verdict had to be spoken aloud. In the end, Charlotte did not break the monarchy. She revealed it. She exposed the fragile line between tradition and tenderness, between order and coldness, between protecting the crown and forgetting the people born beneath it. Balmoral had seen abdications of silence before, but this was different. This was a child stepping toward her mother, and a family finally admitting that protocol had gone too far. Charles gathered the household with the weight of a man who knew silence had already failed. The king delivered the final internal decision. No royal child would ever again be corrected through office instructions during a private family gathering without direct parental involvement. An internal decision, in plain words, is a ruling made inside the family and household before it becomes public or formal. This mattered because Charlotte's pain had forced the monarchy to protect the person, not just the position. Camilla listened with visible difficulty. The queen consort understood that the stand-down instruction from her office was being formally withdrawn, and the household was told Charlotte's movement would not be treated as misconduct. Misconduct simply means behavior judged as wrong or improper. Charles made clear that a child moving toward her mother did not belong in that category. That sentence changed the room. Charlotte received the apology quietly, away from any public display. She did not need a ceremony. She needed to know she had not embarrassed Catherine, had not shamed William, and had not wounded the crown by loving her mother too openly. The apology allowed her to feel seen instead of managed. Charlotte stood close to Catherine afterward, and this time, no one asked her to move. Catherine thanked Charles with restraint, but emotion lived in every word. She understood the decision protected more than Charlotte's dignity. It protected the bond between mother and daughter from being turned into a palace problem. The king saw that emotion, and he did not interrupt it. For once, the monarchy made space for feeling before control. William understood the true victory was not over Camilla. The prince knew the deeper danger had been the system itself. a system that almost turned a child's love into a disciplinary matter. Camilla accepted that truth with difficulty. The queen consort recognized that her office's pursuit of control had damaged trust inside the family, and trust could not be repaired by protocol alone. The Balmoral incident became a defining lesson. The monarchy could survive broken protocol. It could survive awkward headlines, private anger, and bruised pride. But it could not survive losing its humanity in the name of order. Charlotte's step at Balmoral was small, but its meaning was final. In that room, the crown learned that love must never be ordered to stand down. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.